world government, for world peace. Thank you.
One world government. I think given the bureaucracy of the UN, I dread to think what that government's bureaucracy level would be. But no, I don't think so. I think there is probably strength in diversity, but it is much more about shared values, about cooperation and working together, rather than creating one world government.
Madam.
Mr. D.K. Manowalam, you want to ask a question?
Manowalan is, my name is Manowalan. I would like to know, in the international order and rule of law times of SDG, there are very important 2-3 items which you not generally touched here. Would like to clarify cooperation, partnership among countries, partnership within the country at various levels for inclusive growth. How do you look at that in the context of climate change, when the USA has very openly declared that they are not part of the whole declaration? How do you look at that? How these problems can be coordinated and cooperation among the countries will come? This is, can you clarify this?
I did mention that we are living in a world which is very divisive and divided. So international cooperation will not come easily. But also, it's a world where I think there's some consensus growing around certain shared values. If you look at the issue of climate change, yes, the Trump administration has mentioned that they are getting out of the Paris Agreement, but the cities in the US, municipal governments, local governments, state governments, the government of California, for example, have said no. They believe that climate change is a global problem, it's their problem as much as anyone else's, and they will do what they have to do. So you can sort of see how people are speaking up. So that is very reassuring, that it's not just one man or a couple of people in Washington that's deciding, but there are others around the country who are saying, well, we have the power to do things differently, and we want to get along with the world and not be isolationist.
Well, Irene, you've done very well answering all the questions. Only one thing I would ask. Please make the distinction between rule of law and rule by law.
Of course.
That's very important, because it's used by some people to violate human rights.
Yeah. No, I do, and that is why I said I think the so-called thin definition of the rule of law is really rule by law. The thick definition is more the rule of law.
Right. Well, now I have to request Professor James to perform a very agreeable task, and that's to propose a vote of thanks.
Yeah, Soli Sarabji, Ms. Irene, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, Mr. Prushti, and ladies and gentlemen. My task is to express vote of thanks, and it is quite appropriate, as Irene mentioned, that this lecture is almost on the second anniversary of SDGs, which perhaps would have been to this day, but it was in 2 days in advance, so that is there. And the main thing about this agenda was it is more about the inclusive aspects and the interconnectedness between various issues that are to lead to these things. And it was a rewarding experience to hear her talk about the dimensions of the international order and rule of law in times of SDGs. Of course, she made the subtle distinction which is there between rule by law and rule of law. And well, effective rule of law and good governance, these are as necessary as clean air and clean water for the development of all these things. So I take this opportunity to express the appreciation and thanks on behalf of RIS, ILI, and myself to Ms. Irene Khan for spending the evening with us and enlightening us on some of the issues and challenges in international order and rule of law in order to achieve SDGs, particularly about the gender dimension and the law based on justice. It was this thing that she had gone through, the way the Supreme Court has been developing this dimension in India. Thank you for that thing. I also take this opportunity to express Our grateful thanks to Sri Sole Sorabji, former Attorney General of India, and an eminent jurist for chairing this session and also enriching us with a few of the snippets. I also thank all the distinguished persons who have accepted our invitation and attended this event and for their active participation in the discussion. I also thank my colleagues in RIS and the Taj Mahal Hotel for the organization, and thank you. Thank you.
Well, I've got to thank you all for being such a fine audience, being so attentive, and making this event so successful. Thank you all, and we'll see you again. I can't tell you.